The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ariella Wagner. I am the founder of SunRay Construction Solutions, a national preliminary notice service with an extraordinary online software to help subcontractors and suppliers keep track of their deadlines. Today, we have an amazing webinar conducted by the incredible Alex Barthet with the Barthet Law Firm. And today we are going to discuss change order headaches. This is your aspirin, so you get paid. So without further ado, I introduce Alex Barthet.
Thanks, Ariella. Again, my name is Alex Barthet. I am a board-certified construction lawyer serving clients in the state of Florida. And today we're going to talk about change order headaches, which I'm sure you have plenty of. And we'll talk about how the information I'm about to give you is the aspirin that you need to hopefully get you paid. So let's talk about what we're going to cover today in about 20 minutes. So we'll start with the basics quickly. What is a change order? We'll talk about what I see missing from most change orders, and so you can make sure you put it in. And then we'll get deep into some of the best practices that I see to make sure that you get paid. And then we'll answer any questions that you have. With respect to the questions, you should have the go-to webinar chat box on your screen. And if you do, you can go ahead and submit your questions there. Make sure not to include the names of any people or companies in your questions, and we'll go ahead and answer all the questions at the very end of the presentation. So what is a change order? A change order is a simple document that addresses three common issues in a construction project. It modifies the scope by increasing or decreasing it. It modifies the dollars, the amount of compensation, again, also by increase or decrease. And it modifies the time of the contract, also by increasing it or decreasing it. These are the most common things that a change order does. But a change order can modify other things. Maybe via change order, you decide to remove certain terms and conditions. Maybe you shorten the warranty. All of those changes to the contract can be done by a change order to the contract. It can be written or oral, but any oral modification of a contract is always problematic. So we strongly encourage you that if you're going to modify a contract in any way, that modification be in writing, and ideally your underlying contract is in writing as well. So what do we see missing from almost every change order that comes across our desk when a claim arises? That is time. We see most clients rarely use or add time to their change orders. We see that most folks leave it blank completely, or use zero, meaning no additional time, or they write NA, not applicable, to the change order for the time section. So let me explain why time is such an important thing. It is the most valuable resource that you have on your project, because as the project goes on, you have less and less of it. And the ability to catch up on a project is very hard to do. You can never get that time back ever again. So one of the things you should always try to do is add time to every change order to give yourself additional time in the course of construction. So many construction projects end up late, and they also have lots of change orders. And if that's the case, then one of the things you can do is every time you submit a change order and have it executed, you add some time. Maybe it's a day here, 3 days there. It all adds up. So make sure that whenever you submit a change order, you always try to include time. It may not, by the way, get accepted, but if you put 0 or NA, you're getting no chance of increasing the time of your contract. And what we find, interestingly enough, especially early on a project, usually it's ignored and it won't be objected to. So use that as a tip to make sure that the next time, excuse me, the next time you submit a change order, that you add some time so that you can bank it for later use in the job. All right, so let's dig deep into some of the best practices we see and problems we see people face with change orders. You need to make sure that you review and negotiate the change order process that's outlined in your construction contract. This is absolutely critical. You need to understand how the change order process works so that you can follow that process. The single biggest problem that we see clients make is that they are instructed to do additional work that would normally constitute a change. They're urged to move forward with those changes before a change order is either prepared and almost always before it's executed. In most instances, the work is almost always done. The change order work is almost always done before the change order is even submitted, let alone approved. And then those change orders, which represent real money to you because you've done the work, you've bought the materials, you've paid for the labor, so you've incurred that cost. Most of these change orders get kicked down the road during the course of the project and then have to get reconciled towards the end of the project or when the project is completely done. And at that point, you have two problems. Number one, everyone forgets that it was truly a change and they start to argue about it. And two, and the real big problem is you have no real leverage to perform, to get paid because all the work is done. So then you find yourself in a position where the owner, if you're the contractor, or the contractor, if you're a sub, starts to negotiate with you on your changes, and you have very little leverage other than to move forward with the legal process. So you should not fall into that trap. And the way to do that is at the beginning, is to start by reading your contract and understanding the change order process. So what does that process normally look like in most contracts? In most contracts, it says, if you do work without an approved written change order in advance, you do that work for free. We do not have to pay you for that work. You need to get a change order submitted and approved before you do the work, which you may be thinking, well, geez, that never happens. And even if I could make it happen, it's almost impossible from a timing perspective. So what we recommend clients do is take a time out and say, you, contractor, want me to do this change order work. You've sent me a set of plans. They're clouded now with changes. You want me to price and proceed with these changes. I can't do that because your contract says that I can't do that until you sign my change order. So here's my change order. Once you sign it, I can do the work. If you push it back on the other side, and frame it in a way that it's not that you don't want to do the work or that you can't do the work, it's that the contract says that you can't, right? And it's their contract form many times. You can get a lot of leverage that way. The next phase of most change order provisions in a contract is what's called a change directive, which is different than a change order. A change order is a fully negotiated document between the parties that changes the time scope and dollars of a contract. A change directive is an order by the owner to the contractor or the contractor to you that says, you will do this extra work no matter what. And then we will deal with the time and price later. So you have no ability typically to reject it or to negotiate it. You have to do the work. The reason it's important to put your foot down at the beginning, if someone asks you to do change order work without getting a signed change order, is that then the way that they're going to force you to do that work is via change directive. And the important thing about a change directive is, as long as you follow the process, you'll be entitled to something. They won't be able to argue later that it wasn't a change at all because they directed you via the change directive provision in the contract. So we're not going to argue that it was or wasn't a change. We're just going to argue about, is it worth 20,000, 15,000, 25,000? And the change directive provision usually indicates how you have to keep your records to make sure that you can submit the proper billing when the changed work is done. The next thing you need to look at is who has the authority to sign change orders. Many contracts either specify a person by name or a person by title. Only project executives can execute change orders. So if you're getting change orders signed by the superintendent, you should be concerned, because the other side may come back and say, the superintendent had no authority. You signed a contract that said only the project executive can sign change orders. So keep an eye out for that. Another question we get are work tickets change orders? And the short answer is probably not. So sometimes you may be out in the field, your men are in the field, they're doing work, someone says, hey, move this pipe from this location to this location, and you get the super or the foreman that's on the site for the contractor to sign a daily work ticket. Many contracts say that by itself is not a change order entitling you to more time or money. It's just a recognition that you were there doing the work that day. So be careful if you're thinking that daily or weekly work tickets or work tickets for changed work by themselves constitute a change order. You have to look at your contract and see what the process is. You should consider adding a stop work provision to your contract. What does that mean? That means that if you're not paid in a certain amount of time, you get the right to stop work. Many clients of ours are surprised to find that they don't have the right to stop work if they're not paid. They assume that they can stop work if they're not paid, but most contracts say that no matter what, you cannot stop work if you're not paid. So here's a sample provision. Subcontractor may slow or stop work without liability or penalty if it has not been paid its draw request within 30 days of submission to the contractor. So this says if you haven't been paid in 30 days, you get to slow or stop work. This is a change that you should propose to the contract when you're negotiating the contract. Maybe they don't agree to 30 days, maybe it's 45, maybe it's 60, 70, 90 days. The important thing is that it's not never. You don't have to keep funding this project even as you're not getting paid, but you have the right to stop work. Another thing you can do is add a cap on unexecuted change order work or change directive work. So here's a sample provision of what that would look like. Subcontractor shall not be obligated to provide cumulatively additional change order or change directive work, labor, and materials in excess of some amount of money. Maybe it's $5,000, maybe it's $200,000, without said amount first being paid in full. So it's kind of like a running tab. So if they ask you to do change order work or change directive work and they haven't paid for it, you don't have to keep doing it until that balance comes down. Again, it keeps you from having to continue to fund the job if you're not getting paid. What's most important is that if you sign a contract that has certain provisions, terms and conditions, you're going to be bound by those terms and conditions. You're not going to be able to say, well, I can't do that work. I'm not going to do that change directive work until you pay me, if the contract doesn't give you that right. So it's very important that you read the terms and conditions in your contract and modify them via an addendum to the contract before you sign it. Documentation is absolutely critical. You need to document everything that's happening on the job. This is important because if you want to claim later that certain work that you needed to do was impacted by other work or other conditions, it's going to fall on you to prove that. And the best way to prove it is with lots of documents. Let me give you an example of what I mean. You should be taking pictures of your job site several times a week. Those pictures should include the areas that you're working, the building as a whole, what's happening around you in the area of the building, kind of the outside, which may become relevant later in ways that you don't even know. Emails are proper correspondence in most instances. So are you emailing the contractor, the owner, letting them know about issues in the field, things that are impacting your work. When you attend meetings, are you getting the meeting minutes? Do the meetings minutes accurately reflect what was discussed? If not, are you sending an email within a few days of those meeting minutes being delivered to you, clarifying or adding things that were not discussed? We have a case right now in which the contractor claims that they were had given us, my client, the owner, notice of additional costs and time associated with the work. None of that was in writing. They claim it was done during the meetings. But if you look at the meeting minutes, those meeting minutes reflect the opposite. Did the contractor submit emails upon receipt of the meeting minutes objecting to what was said? No, he didn't. He's going to have a hard time proving that that the content in that meeting was materially different than what's reflected in the minutes, because if it was, one would assume that he would have objected, and he never did. Remember to add time to every change order. We already discussed that. That tip alone can save you from some issues in the future. With that, we are done covering the content for the presentation, but if you have any questions, now would be the time to submit them. While you are thinking of any questions, let me go over a few other things. We have a tool in the App Store in both the Google Play Store and the iPhone App Store, which helps you calculate the notice to owner and lien date deadlines. You can download that by searching for the Lien Zone, LIENZONE, in the App Store. And then we have some upcoming webinars and seminars. The next webinar we have is a webinar we just added called The Lien Law Just Changed. Are you ready? There are some major changes that were made to the lien law in this legislative session in Florida. We're going to cover what those are so that on September 12th from 9 to 9:20, so that you're prepared to deal with them as they go into effect. Some of them have gone into effect and they're relatively minor, and there are some significant ones that are going into effect in October that affect the forms that you use that SunRay will take care of if you use SunRay in the SunRay system. But we're going to talk about what they are and how they work and the significance of the changes. You do not want to miss this presentation to make sure that you are prepared and you don't lose rights because you weren't aware of the changes. Make sure to pass this information out to other folks that you know to attend this webinar that you think would find this information useful. We do a live event every few months. Our next one is on October 22nd from 8 to 11 in Fort Lauderdale. We take a very deep dive in the lien law, the bond statute, contract provisions, all focused on how to reduce your liability and increase the likelihood that you're going to get paid. You can sign up for all of these webinars and the live seminars at sunraynotice.com/education. So Ariella, do we have any questions?
You did such a spectacular, wait 1 second. We have one question so far. There is someone who asked, we have only one, oh, here we go, I see. I'm just trying to read their sentence. They made just a small change, so I just have to read it carefully. Okay, I'm going to try to make this sentence out. Are there scenarios from the contractor's point of view or subcontractor or client? The person that wrote that sentence, if you would be a little bit more descriptive, that would be wonderful for everyone. Each question is very important. Or if you want to email that to us, we could certainly answer that. If you just could be a little bit more descriptive, that would be great. Because I'm not sure that made sense to you, Alex. Are these scenarios
Oh, I understand the question.
Okay.
So everything I talked about applies typically to contractors in the course of their contract with the owner. Most owner contracts require contractors to deal with change orders in the way we discussed, so via change order or change directive. And it's also true between the contractor and the subcontractor, as well as between subs and sub-subs, depending on what those contracts say. So generally speaking, this applies, all the information I gave you applies to whether or not you are a contractor dealing with owners, a subcontractor dealing with contractors, but also as well being aware if you're a contractor, you're dealing with it on both ends, right? As both in your contract with the owner and your contract with your subcontractor, except obviously you want to try to do the opposite if you're the contractor with your subs than what you deal with the owner, right? You want to try to cut a better deal with the owner and place more obligations on your subcontractors. If I didn't answer that question well enough for whoever asked it, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to try to clarify that. Ariella, do we have any other questions?
At the moment, we do not have any other questions, but as you can see, our email addresses and phone numbers are on this page. So if you have a question that you think of later, please feel free to send us an email or call us at any time. So
great.
Alex,
I hope everyone has a great day.
I hope fabulous job, and I wish everyone a sunny day.